The honourable member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the Prime Minister and the Bloc aren't worth it. The more the government spends, backed by the Bloc, the more Quebecers struggle. The housing crisis will soon force Canadians to live, through no fault of their own, in their minivans as a last resort, not as their retirement dream. Mr. Speaker, when will this Prime Minister, backed by the Bloc, with $500 billion in budget appropriations, when will they stop wasting money so Quebecers can once again live with dignity under the roof of a house, not of their minivans? Once again, I'd like to encourage all members to remain silent when a member is asking a question, and obviously when the answer is given. The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, Canadians will not be lectured by the Conservatives and their support for extremist groups in Canada. Canadians know they're a party with no vision, no ambition, and no plan either for this country. Here on this side of the House, we know that we need to help families, we need to invest in housing, but you know what? People are seeing that members opposite have voted against support for children, for housing, and for investments in Quebec. It's shameful. Here on this side, we will always fight to improve Canadians' quality of living. The honourable member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government hasn't built any housing. They've just built more bureaucracy. With $500 billion in centralizing and inflationary spending that created this cost of living crisis and the housing crisis we're currently in, Mr. Speaker, with thousands of Canadians in dire straits, will the Prime Minister see to it that housing is built quickly? When you're at the point where you're sleeping in your van or your car, it's because this Prime Minister is asleep on the job! The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While my colleague practices his performance for Infoman, we are doing what needs doing. With the fund to help young people save up for their first down payment, 650,000 young people have signed up for that, and they have saved $2.6 billion that way. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this government, Canada's housing crisis has only gotten worse. The dream of buying a home is dead for an entire generation. Proof that the Bloc and this Prime Minister aren't worth the cost. In Beauce, families lucky enough to have affordable housing still have to go to food banks to feed themselves, a 20% increase in use since the start of 2024. When will this Bloc-backed Prime Minister stop wasting money so Quebecers can find decent housing and food? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 6 units of affordable housing were built under the Conservative leader's tenure as Minister of Housing. But I'm glad they asked that question because he's a former mayor of a municipality in Quebec, and the Conservative leader, has basically called all Quebec municipalities incompetent.
The honourable member for Beauce. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, my colleague across the way should come visit Beauce this weekend and explain that to our people. Now, the more this government spends, the more Quebecers are suffering. We're talking about $500 billion in centralizing and inflationary spending that is exacerbating the housing crisis. While Quebecers are trying to survive, the Bloc Québécois has chosen to vote in favour of $500 billion in Liberal budget appropriations. That means they're voting for bureaucracy and for waste. When will this government get out of the way so that Conservatives can fix the budget and build the homes? The Honourable Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party are using vulnerable Canadians for their own political purposes. That's not acceptable. Mr. Speaker, through our national housing strategy, we are creating over 150,000 more units of affordable housing. Now, just for comparison, Mr. Speaker, 6 units of affordable housing were built from coast to coast when the leader of the opposition was Minister of Housing. That was unacceptable. We are investing in building affordable housing in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada. Once again, I ask the member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier and the member for Mégantic-L'Érable to please wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking.